Hi, Olympic Church family. I'm Iris, and I just had the absolute blessing of hearing a young and uprising preacher, Jason Lee, preach his sermon. And it was one of the most inspiring and incredible sermons I've ever listened to. I think it really displays how well and how amazing of a person he is. And I think it would be absolutely a blessing for you to come and watch him live this Friday and hear his sermon for yourself in person. And we'll see you there.
Okay, should I start now?
Yeah. Mhm.
Happy Sabbath, church family. My name is Jason Lee, and I am a sixth grader. I was born in three generations of pastors to make a new decree to worship to worship and fear the one and true only God. Yes, that's all.
I really like the way you started your sermon, and I think it's really relatable to other people. Like I think all my friends who are like PKs, pastors kids, they all have this like pressure to like become a pastor. And I think the way you talked about it and you were like you have like your own interests and stuff, I think that was a really nice way to start off the sermon.
Okay.
But but I also really like the way you recalled the story of Daniel, because I think you didn't like miss out on any like important like events, but you also didn't like go so specific that like you didn't get the main idea of the story.
Okay.
So I really like that. And I think you made a lot of eye contact, which is really good. And I think because you're like you're not as familiar with your sermon as like you would be in like 3 days. So I think as you get like more familiar with what you write, when you'll be just it'll be easier for you to make eye contact. And then I think um I think sorry, lost my train of thought completely. But I think you talked really clearly and slowly and you didn't rush through it, which is really good because like I always rush through everything. So I think it is a little bit hard to like not fidget when you're like doing like these big things, but when you're like in front of the whole like audience, if you like you can just imagine them as like potatoes and just like try not to like fidget as much. But then I think, but I think like presentation wise and like attention grabbing wise, I think you do a really good job of it, and I wouldn't worry too much about it. And like I said, as you get more familiar with what you wrote, you're gonna make eye contact more. You're gonna know what you're gonna say, and I think it'll sound really good.
Okay.
But I think you did a really good job. It was a very nice sermon, and I think you did a great job delivering it.
Okay. Is there any improvements to do on um this sermon I'm doing in front of the whole audience? Like, probably I'm gonna forget some words because as anxiety starts to escalate in my body, I would start probably losing my mind just preaching in front of the whole entire audience, which is probably normal for other people, but still it's kind of scary. Is there
Mhm.
anything I could do or like to help prevent that?
For me, when I did the thing, I like reread my speech like so many times, and it like it's gonna like there's gonna be parts where you forget words and you like stumble a little bit, but I think you should like really trust that you do know what you write, and I think that like it's like that anxiety will always be there and it'll always like build up, but like in the end, it's like if you really need to just read look at your paper and read it, like oh like I feel like that's like what calmed me down. Like if all goes wrong, I can just look down at my paper and read it, and I
Okay.
think when you're up there you feel like you forget a lot about what you're going to say and what you're going to write. But I think if you like read it enough times, which I know you will, and like you're going to get really familiar with it, I think if you like just like, I know it's like, I think it's like impossible to like forget that there's an audience. But like if you try to be like, oh, like these are people who watched you growing up, they watched you like do more like, embarrassing things when you were younger, these are people that like aren't going to like judge you if you like, slip over a word. So I think if you just like don't see them as like a bunch of people staring at you like doing it, but you're like, oh, these are my friends and these are like my family members um who think it's just so cool that I'm up here preaching. And I think and also you're gonna like trip over like little words and you're gonna think is like so important, but when you're in the audience it won't like bother them, they will barely notice it. So I think knowing that like it's like it won't be as bad as like what you are thinking in the moment.
Okay.
Mhm. And then there's there's always a trick. You can always imagine them as potatoes if
Okay.
if like if all fails. And then I think that's it. I think because like you didn't like I genuinely think it's so like impressive how you just like read through that with like loud voice and like very like steady. So I don't think you're gonna like speed up just because there's a bunch of people. And I think you're gonna still deliver it very clearly,
Okay.
even if you forget like a few words. But
Okay.
Mhm.
So, okay, should I start now?
Yeah. Mhm.
Happy Sabbath, church family. My name is Jason Lee, and I am a sixth grader. I was born in 3 generations of pastors, and my dad wishes me to be a fourth generation of pastor for Olympic Church. But my goal is to become a plant biologist who studies all aspects of plants. Maybe an artist, maybe an artist for my second job, probably an artist who creates paintings of plants. These are the brief introduction of myself and how I view my future. In Daniel chapter 6, king's advisors were jealous of Daniel because Daniel was raised to high officer position by King Darius. Since the advisors did not like Daniel, they tricked the king to issue a decree for 30 days no prayers should be done to any gods or men except for the king. This decree was also illustrate that if the person honors and worships other gods, will be thrown into the lion's den. As we all know, Daniel prayed 3 times a day, thanking and praising the true and holy God. And the wicked man saw Daniel and reported to the king immediately. When the king heard the news, he was very sad because he did not want Daniel to be killed by the lions because of his faith, because how faithful and honorable Daniel was to King Darius. However, once the law has been established, it could not be changed, and Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. But hope was in the king's heart, and he wished that Daniel was saved by his God. And at the break of dawn, King Darius headed towards the lion's den and checked if Daniel was alive or not. But then, to his surprise, Daniel was unharmed, not even one scratch on his skin. At that moment, King Darius was overjoyed as soon as he saw Daniel's face. Daniel explained how God has protected him from the lions, and since because of that miracle, what God has done to Daniel, King Darius decided to make a new decree to worship to worship and fear the one and true only God. Yes, that's all.
I really like the way you started your sermon, and